слышите, да? Слышите?
Вас очень плохо слышно.
Сейчас лучше, я делаю наушники. Нет?
Нет, не лучше.
Не лучше, да? Попробую без наушников еще раз. Так. Так, сейчас тут у нас еще люди добавляются. Я никого не вижу. Вы можете там выйти или вы специально видео отключили?
Совсем плохо слышно.
У меня большая просьба выключить звук участников. Далее, когда мы начнем уже сессию, мы будем вам подключать звук. Хорошо? Вы можете, здесь есть такая функция помахать руками, помахать рукой. Можете, если у вас будет вопрос, вы можете помахать рукой и написать свой вопрос в чат. Да? Так, у нас еще один участник. Сейчас давайте мы... Вот у нас 17 участников, да? Так, я себе звук нечаянно выключила. Теперь меня слышно?
Ждем. Ну, соответственно...
Джозеф,
Yeah, I'm ready.
are you ready? So,
I am ready.
Okay, we have one more person. Alright, where are you? Alright, okay. I turn on sound for you. Okay, we have one more participant. Just a second. Danir. But Joseph, do you see somebody? I see just one participant, Jean Duchasse.
Oh, everyone turned their cameras off. It's okay. I don't mind.
Okay.
They're not in space like I am.
So I see Madiyar.
С WhatsApp себе на почту не получается.
Так, еще Сандугаш у нас один участник, добавляется. Давайте мы потихонечку начнем, если вы не против, да? Арай, ты слышишь, да?
Да, я слышу.
Ну все, хорошо, давайте потихоньку начнем. В принципе, у нас вроде все уже добавились. Я единственное никого не вижу, наверное, вы отключили камеры. Я сейчас отключила всем участникам звук для того, чтобы наш эфир был чище. В общем, позвольте представиться, меня зовут Санья, с кем-то мы уже знакомы, кого-то я вижу в первый раз. Я работаю в Astana Hub менеджером комьюнити. Сегодня у нас пройдет встреча с генеральным директором Astana Hub Джозефом Циглером. Вы, наверное, знаете, что Джозеф является специалистом в области технологий. У него есть опыт международный более чем 20 лет в качестве SEO и в качестве SEO-директора. Также у Джозефа в багаже 5 инновационных стартапов. В общем, достаточно такой большой опыт хороший. Мы надеемся, что сегодняшний эфир будет вам полезен, пройдет легко. Если у вас будут сложности с английским языком, вы можете спрашивать свои вопросы, писать в чат на русском. У Джозефа есть ассистент Арайлы, она поможет вам с переводом. В общем, в чат можете писать свои вопросы либо на русском, либо на английском. Там уже Арай будет смотреть, если они на русском будут переводить, если на английском, то она уже, она уже будет читать. Также вы можете помахать рукой, я вам буду подключать звук, чтобы вы могли напрямую спросить, хорошо? Слышно меня было? So, Joseph, just a second. Let me introduce our CEO of Astana Hub, Joseph Циглер. He has more than 20 years of experience, international experience, and about 5 innovation startups in his life, and he is technical specialist. So, Joseph, you can say about you something?
Sure. Okay. And you already explained about language and everything, right? Yeah. Okay, sure. My name's Dr. Joseph Циглер. Sonia's right. I've had five startup exits, which means I've had 5 companies that we have sold in some way. 2 companies, we had an IPO on the NASDAQ, and the other companies were private sales. My last company that I made, I sold in 2015 for about $134 million USD among our founders. I also run an investment fund in Singapore, which invests in early stage startups. And we're running at about a 300% return now on that fund. I have also run several startup programs. I ran it for Amazon Web Service. I've run it for the Australian government. I've run it for some private companies, and now running it here at Astana Hub. So, all right, do you need to translate a bit?
I think that Sonia made already clarifications. It's okay, so we can continue.
Okay, great. So, today is basically it's just a Q&A. It's for all of you guys to get any questions that you have. I would say it's about 25 years now I've been doing startups. I'm also an engineer. I have a bachelor's and a doctorate in computer science. And I've worked all over the world in startups. So I think I can give you a very good perspective if you're interested in creating a startup, if you want to expand your startup, if you want to understand if you have what I would consider a good idea for a startup, or any of those questions. So feel free to ask me anything that you want. What's the best way? I guess you can just ask. Does anyone have a specific topic that they would like me to start with?
Всем добрый день. Как отметил Джозеф Циглер, он хочет провести questions and answers, то есть вопросы и ответы. Вы задаете вопросы, он отвечает вам на английском языке. Если вам трудно, вы можете написать в чат свой вопрос, я ему буду переводить. Также он может помочь вам расширить свой проект и рассказать о всех необходимых мерах поддержки от Astana Hub.
Хорошо. Спасибо большое, Джозеф. Я вижу, что у нас еще 3 участника подсоединились. Так, сейчас Жан, Санджат, Владимир. Здравствуйте. Еще раз всем здравствуйте. Добро пожаловать к нам на вебинар. Если есть возможность, можете подключить камеры. Также я вас попрошу всех отключить звук. Если у вас есть вопросы, вы можете писать в чат. Давайте пишите в чат. Райла будет читать ваши вопросы, переводить, если они будут на русском языке, а далее Джозеф будет отвечать.
Sarah, excuse me, can you please look at the chat, or I can read?
Yeah, we have one. We have one in chat. Let me, everyone, you can see this on chat, so I don't need to repeat it. Also, Sonia, I see a message there that people are trying to get in that can't get in. I want to look at that on the chat. So the question is, can you give a recommendation on how to start translating ideas into reality? It's kind of a general question, but sure, I can address this. I think we all have, ideas of problems that we want to solve, right? But the key thing to remember when doing startups is essentially you need to solve problems that make money, essentially, and that can be backed by a business idea, right? I see a lot of times in kind of early stage markets, in which Kazakhstan is kind of moving from earlier stage, is that people come up with a lot of ideas that solve problems that are close to them, which tends to be consumer ideas. I need a taxi, I need food delivery, I need a date. And these are not necessarily ideas that maybe are the easiest ones for you to turn into a business. All right, do you want to translate a little bit of that before I keep going? She wasn't listening.
Continue if the person already wrote in the English. Sandu, do you understand?
I think Sandu wanna.
For me, all clear. Okay, yeah.
Okay, no problem. So here's the question. If you have an idea, the very first thing I think you should do is you want to test the idea before reality, but you want to test it very cheaply, right? I have so many people that have an idea. They want to go spend some money on some people to create a prototype, proof of concept, or MVP or whatever. And that's going to cost you a lot of money. What you should do instead is take your solution and first go out and find out who your customer is, right? And there's a difference between the customer and the user in any kind of application. The user might be anyone who uses your app, your company, but the customer is the guy paying for it. That's the important person, right? So what you need to do is when you first have this idea, you need to identify who that customer is, and you need to go and talk to them. So if you have an idea for, whatever you want to do, agricultural application, you need to go out and talk to the farmers who might use it. If you want to do a consumer application, you should go out and talk to consumers and find out specifically, what would they pay for something? If I could solve this problem, what would it be worth to you? This should be your first step, because regardless of how cool your idea is or how you execute on it or how well you market it, if there's not a road for you to get someone to pay for it, then it's not going to be successful, right? So that has to be the first step. After that, then the next thing I do is I start to actually map out and draw out what I want as the solution. So there's a lot of things you can do that are very deep to start. Asking customers, do wireframes, PowerPoint presentation on what it looks like. All these things you can do before you start spending money. And then once you're confident on that a customer, someone will pay for your solution, then you start defining kind of the smallest thing that you can launch. And they always call this MVP, minimal viable product. It's basically the smallest, cheapest, quickest thing you can build that will test whether your solution is going to survive in a marketplace. And that could be a web app, that could be an iOS app. It could even be sometimes what you have is a website and a bunch of human beings behind the website that are doing all the work. It's not even automated. Sometimes you just hire a bunch of interns. That's the first really big step in turning your idea into reality. Does that help? I'm reading in chat. Okay, great.
Sir, here's a question from Nurdaulet Abdilgapar.
Mm-hmm.
His question is there any support for the projects which is connected with agriculture from the Astana Hub? And is it possible to attract VC into agricultural projects?
Okay. So when I think about problems, or when I think about businesses you can start in Kazakhstan as a startup, one of the areas I get most excited about is actually agriculture. And the reason that I get excited about agriculture specifically in Kazakhstan is, you know, agriculture is the third largest contributor to the GDP. So that means it's big business here, right? So that's interest point number one. People with the problem need to have money, okay? You know, you're not doing charity. So when you talk about being the third largest contributor to GDP, there's money. You know, the opposite of that is sometimes people say, hey, I want to build something for students. Now, I love students. I know there's a lot of students on this call. Generally, in a lot of countries, students don't have a lot of money. So it's a lot harder to make a business out of it, right? But in Kazakhstan, agriculture being a big contributor to the GDP, it's also probably one of the areas that has not been innovated at all. Very little innovation, actually. And in many ways, it's actually very traditional. So we've made ag tech one of our key areas to focus in on Astana Hub. What we can provide, so you guys probably already know what we provide every startup registers, the help, the tax-free, the visas. I think what's critical for ag tech is you're going to want to work along with the Ministry of Agriculture if you can, and you want to align your startup so it helps meet their KPIs and their goals. And we can work with you to help do that, which is probably going to be your biggest benefit. Because I believe, you know, specifically with Kazakhstan too, is because the government has a lot of interest and is very involved with the enterprises. By having them as a partner, you're going to get the most benefit out of that. Additionally, we have several connections to international agri-tech programs, such as Sprout in Australia, that we could definitely support you connecting into. There's a lot of room for innovation in Kazakhstan for drone farming, for helping of export of agricultural products. And as far as I can tell, for mapping even, there's not a lot of work being done there. So I think this is a huge opportunity.
Do you guys think that I need to translate it maybe shortly in Russian? Нурдаулет, вам нужен, да, перевод?
I think you could type it in the chat. But...
Okay.
Да.
Whatever is giving me one. Here we go.
May I ask it?
Yeah.
Okay, your last interview said that Kazakhstan should be specific and specified on smart cities.
Yep.
And have you changed your mind? And probably there are new insights. You get rid of this idea, or you found how to say new proofs that we should be specific on smart cities. Can you expand this question?
I think so. Okay, smart cities, as you guys know, it's kind of a general term for using technology to interface, you know, the people in the planning of cities. A lot of places are doing smart cities. Singapore is quite big on it. Kazakhstan's actually a bigger player in smart cities in Central Asia. So we have a technological advantage here in that there's many deployments of the smart city technology already in place. There's a live environment in the capital, and there's other micro districts that have smart city components that entrepreneurs can use and interface with. And so I like the fact that Kazakhstan has an inherent advantage, right? You don't want to do smart cities in a place that has no skill set in smart cities, or you can't get any support. But Kazakhstan's even at the point now where they can look at exporting smart city technology to Uzbekistan, for example. So we still absolutely focus on smart cities. We are looking at some relationships. Specifically, we're looking at some stuff with Israel, for example, and we also have relationships in Korea to leverage smart city. I think smart cities is going to be even hotter because once we get done with quarantine, you know now that we have a whole new use for smart cities, which is going to be tracking health and contagious outbreaks of viruses. And so I suspect smart cities is going to be even more relevant in 2020. it's going to be surveillance too, but it's going to be sharing of data, mapping outbreaks. A lot of health data is going to go into it too. So I'm very excited about smart cities still.
And can you name several startups, Kazakhstani startups in this field?
It just kind of depends on, what you call with smart cities, right? You could say even like kids security, for example, is smart cities. You could say also, license plate tracking is in a way with smart cities, right? And then of course you have Astana Innovations is tasked with building out a lot of the smart city. And I think also in Almaty, the mayor, the Akim, is doing quite a bit too in that area. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
A lot of Sergex for surveillance.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's some downside to smart city, I will say also. But there's also what's going to be interesting too in Kazakhstan, and maybe people don't know that as much, is Kazakhstan's a great place to do data farms or server farms. Yeah, Kazakhstan has the second cheapest electricity in the world. And with the cold weather, you can actually build big data centers here. That means that there are organizations who are looking at Kazakhstan not only to do Bitcoin mining, but also to do big AI installations, because they take a lot of compute power. And if that's the case, is we might have a lot of AI power available in the future to build solutions, smart solutions and other solutions soon. And that's another advantage that we can have in Kazakhstan. Okay. Just go on the next one here. So working the Kazakhstan embassy in France, visualization project, attraction of investors between two countries and exchange experience. Okay, the question really is, how can Kazakhstan become more attractive for international players? Okay, this is a good question. Thank you. So I think you have to be quite realistic. As a consumer market, Kazakhstan's limited, right? This is not a big population, and the population is spread out. So, bringing in startups and investors for consumer side startups like marketplaces, deliveries, these kinds of things is going to be very hard. Because, I could look at a market like Vietnam. You have 90 million people in Vietnam. This is one market, right? But when you start to talk about business to business markets, things get more interesting, because if you were able to come in and, let's say, take a large portion of some of the B2B market here, that could be worth quite a bit. So agriculture, as we said before, resource sector, it would be huge. It's a big area here. Green energy may potentially be another big area here. So we have to focus in on the sectors that could potentially make high returns. Because investors and international startups, they want to make money. And so if we can help those types of resources come in and off land into Kazakhstan by giving them connectivity into some of these bigger B2B markets. Hey, you're into oil and gas, we can connect you right to TCO, and from TCO you can go work at to Chevron. So this is a huge opportunity, a bigger opportunity than anywhere else. Then we can attract the best people, same with agriculture. So we have to promote these sectors internationally. The other thing that we can do, and we're seeing this from venture capitalists in the market, is they want to use Kazakhstan as a Central Asia hub. And so that's another place that we can look at expanding. That if you come into Kazakhstan, we can leverage our networks and help you go into Uzbekistan, we can help you go into Tajikistan, and even sometimes they want to go, farther west, to Azerbaijan and into the Caucasus regions. And so that's something else that we're looking at leveraging. And I think we're having some success. We'll be bringing in a VC. We announced that we're bringing in Two's Ventures. And they're going to come in and they're interested in focusing on Central Asia. So those are the two things that we have to promote. Let's see here. Vladimir, you want me to say the top 5 achievements of Kazakhstan startup ecosystem in 2019? Like a list?
Yeah. As well, it could be your personal, like, your personal achievement in the position of CEO.
Okay. So I think, where you want to start on that is you want to really, when you take a look at Kazakhstan, you really want to take a look at kind of the whole ecosystem and where we started. And I don't think it's going to be kind of equal to compare Kazakhstan to, let's say, Ukraine or to some other countries such as Belarus on a one-to-one basis. Because in order to create a culture of entrepreneurship and a culture of startups, it takes a lot of moving parts. One part is people have to be entrepreneurial and they have to have a tradition of owning businesses and going into businesses, right? And you also have to have a tradition of making solutions, producing products, for example. And you have to have a tradition of investing. So people have to be willing to throw money at areas that they maybe don't know or going to gamble on it in some sense. They don't know what the outcome is going to be. Like in Singapore, I can get a lot of people to invest in me because culturally people are, okay, I can write you a check for this. I'm not worried about it. And these things all kind of add together to create this ecosystem. And then you also have this other piece, which is called Dutch disease. Dutch disease basically means you have a very good resource in your country that drives the economy. So you don't have to do anything else, technically. So like Australia is a good example, right? Australia has a massive resource sector. It's huge, and there's lots of resources. And so its economy could just run on the resource sector. But if you look at Singapore, for example, its only export is people. It's knowledge capital, right? So to compare Kazakhstan to countries like Singapore, I think it's not a good comparison. But instead, I would say, if you look at the progress from where we started, I'm very proud for how far we've gotten. We've got many startups who have investment. So the investment is starting to roll. In fact, some of them have had quite large investments I've been very impressed by. So that's one piece. The second thing is the maturity of the startups is way ahead of what I expected. So what's interesting is, so we're learning how to create startups. So if you think about it, Kazakhstan as a startup ecosystem is a startup creating startups. Does that make sense? It's like a meta startup. So the distance, for example, when I was in Singapore, the distance that Singapore went from, 2005 to like, let's say, 2015, they had to go like this far. And this took 10 years. We learned a lot. And we don't have to travel the same distance in Kazakhstan. And so I would say, where it took Singapore 10 years to get across the ecosystem being where it's at, Kazakhstan's going to do it at a rate maybe twice or 3 times faster, because we can look and we can see what worked. We can create tax-free zones. We can help bring in the investors. So I would say a third point would be the velocity that Kazakhstan is developing the ecosystem is higher than any place I've been. So we're moving fast. We're not as far down the road on some bits, but we're headed there faster than I've ever seen. So I think, those are the top things. The quality of the startups, the amount of investment, and how fast we're innovating is probably the biggest things that jump out at me. We still struggle though. Investment's a tough one. So, let's see here.
So we have questions from Timurlan Diatov. If you don't mind, I will turn on the voice. Timurlan, you can ask Joseph.
Yeah, I don't quite understand the question here.
Тимирлан, а что вы хотели спросить? Вы можете сказать или написать? Саня, можете включить звук микрофона, пожалуйста?
Oh, hello everybody. Does anybody hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. So briefly, now we are going to spread our business in Dubai, especially in United Arab Emirates, and in comparison between Eastern Asian market, Singaporean market, or United States, what the difficulties and obstacles between the VCs there?
When you say between the VCs, you mean to get investment? What difficulties would you have? So you're an AI startup, and you want to know which market is best to get investment?
Yes.
So what does your startup actually do with AI though?
Well, we are just developing the artificial intelligent robots, the voice understanding, for automation, the contact centers in corporate enterprise sphere, like banking or fintech, mobile operators, etc.
Okay, so it's automatic contact centers. Okay, so being an AI startup in itself, that's not what you are, right? That's the technology that you're using. If you're an AI, let's say, startup, you would actually be creating, like, adding to the AI science, let's say. But for you, if I understand correctly, you are a startup which is providing contact automation, and the way you do that is through AI. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the difference, right? You're an AI-based startup doing contact information. So there are markets. Okay, so Singapore would be interesting for a couple of reasons. Is that within Southeast Asia, the Philippines is the world capital for BPO. They call it BPO. Is you probably know, right? It's call centers. And so the investors in Southeast Asia are quite familiar with what your market is like, right? So I think in that way that market might have an advantage for you, because I think investors will be more sophisticated, because they're investing in a solution for a contact center solution in that case. But I'm not so sure about the other markets so much. So another quite interesting advantage, though, is what you have. There's an advantage too in the Kazakh market that there's several, but another advantage that we have here is the strong Russian language. And because of the relationship with the Eurasian Economic Union, you could potentially set up let's say a Russian-based voice robot center in Kazakhstan to serve the Russian market without having to comply with Russian privacy law or other Russian laws, because as long as you comply with Kazakh law, they have to allow you to export to Russia under the treaty. And so that could actually be another interesting market that you could find investors in, because again, you have an advantage. The Russian market's a tough market for anyone outside to enter, but Kazakhstan could actually be a place where you can address the market from a more friendly place for international people, for example. So let's see. Someone said, can they ask a question about their startup? Anyone can ask any question.
Yeah, can I ask?
Sure, sure.
So I am a young student from Kubitu, and we have a startup course. And within this startup course, we are starting our own startup. So we are kind of developing a web platform for teachers where they can use our AI for creating automated tests. So we are we made MVP in the form of landing page or like layout of the web platform, but as further and deeper we are learning how to create an AI, it is more clear for us that is kind of very difficult problem for us, and we have no idea what to start from. Should we find investments for developing a product, or just learn deeper and do the next step of the MVP?
Okay, it's who's teaching your course?
It's Vladimir Popov.
Yeah, I guess you know.
Yeah, you got to watch out for that guy. No, so developing AI technology, of course, it can be very expensive depending on what you're doing. But to be honest, so what does your solution do, actually?
So the teacher just should provide a link to their podcast or live streaming, or just upload a video file from their lectures, and AI will just do all the things to make a good test for them.
Okay, all right. So one of the really cool things about a lot of AI is that you can fake it. Now, you know, in the startup world, we say fake it till you can make it, in some sense, right? And I'm not saying something that is fraudulent or dishonest, but I'm saying your customers don't care about the technology behind it, right? They want a solution, right? None of us care what Zoom is doing right now as long as it works and doesn't spy on us too much, and we don't get Zoom bombed. So you don't actually need to invest all the time and resources to build an AI before you test your solution. So there's a concept, Amazon's even got a service called Mechanical Turk. And what Mechanical Turk is basically, it was a machine that played chess, but it turns out it wasn't actually a machine, it was a human being playing chess inside the machine, that it wasn't a machine at all. I would say to yourself, I would have a solution that involves people for right now. And provide that solution to your customers, and make sure you have that business model right. Make sure it's something they want and something that they'll pay for. Because I can get a lot of people to help out, and we can go through those manually, right? And those videos and manually manipulate them and tag them and do what we need to do. And then you can test to see if it's going to work or not. And then if you have it working and you have customers, and you can prove it's a good business model, you'll understand how much AI you really have to do, because you'll see all the work that the people are doing. You'll understand the workflow. Person uploads file. This is hard. This is easy. This takes this long. And two, if you're actually doing it right, you might have customers, even paying customers. In this case, if you need to go and try to get some money, you can show a lot more progress. Because you say, no, have it up and running. Now we need to automate it with AI. That is a lot easier for someone to give you money for than to, I have an idea, I need to hire some people. This is hard. So I would, for your next step, actually basically mimic the AI with manual processes for now, learn how those processes work, what needs to be automated, and see if you can capture some customer market. And then you can start to automate it piece by piece. And it may be that some pieces of this automation and this workflow are cheap and easy to automate. You know, maybe there's one step that won't cost that much for you to change the automated process, but the rest stays manual. And then you can pick what you need to automate to enhance your business. That's how I would approach that.
Oh, thank you very much.
Did that make sense? Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
So we have
Okay.
from Sandu. Sandu, you can turn on the microphone and ask Joseph. Do you hear me?
Саня, вас чуть-чуть плохо слышно. Или
Okay,
даже вообще не слышно.
Oh, I can repeat it. It's a good question. So does Kazakhstan have a good market of developers? Do we have universities who teaches how to be developers? You can kindly advise the best books building a startups and VCs. Okay, I'll start with the first one. So worldwide, there just are not enough developers, period. Nobody has enough developers. I would say probably Kazakhstan is below average when it comes to the amount of technical people available right now, which is why now we have this, IT university coming up. It's why we have programming schools. It's why I think in the universities that do have technical programs, the students are in very high demand. So no, we need more developers. I actually say, even Steve Jobs said this at one point, is everyone should learn how to code. I think everybody who wants to do a startup, you should study and at least know how to do basic computer programming, right? I mean, if I didn't know how to code, that's like, I want to own a chain of restaurants, but I don't know how to cook. I don't have to be like a great chef, but I have to understand the principles of this. But no, we have to get more developers. And I think that some countries are actually doing a great job of it because they started as outsourcing centers. So they have a lot of technical skill. The Belarus and Georgia both are doing a very good job at this. So we have to get more developers. What was the second question here? Let's see. And you do have universities that are going to be developers, but we need more. There's not a problem with the quality, it's the quantity. And there's a shortage worldwide. So I right now I'm taking a class at home. I'm creating my own cryptocurrency using Python just to keep my skills up myself. So what are some of the best books? I think Steve Blank puts out some very good books because he was a startup guy. And then he became an investor. His books, Steve Blank, we had his partner in Astana a few years ago. The one who wrote the startup manual. What was his name? Bob Dorf. Yeah. The startup manual, that's a pretty good book. It's a little bit out of date. Right now, what I think some of the struggling points I think I see in Kazakhstan is taking risks in entrepreneurship. I think I would focus in on some of those areas on entrepreneurship. I'm trying to think who's a good authors in those areas. Because it's a difficult thing to teach. For most people, I say join a startup if you can. Before I joined startups, before I did my own startup, most of my startups I joined as a technical co-founder. These days, I have to think about who's a good author because there's just so much data that comes out in pure writing. Let me think about that. But I'll give you some advice. You will get a lot of advice from a lot of people, and you can always appreciate that advice. And there'll be a lot of people who have experience in areas you're going in. So if you go into agriculture, you might have a person who knows agriculture, or if you go into finance or medicine, you have a doctor give you advice. But always ask yourself when you take this advice, what kind of experience does the person have in this area? And so if you have anyone telling you how to run your startup or how to get investment or how to invest in a startup, my first question is always, how many startups have you been in? When you tell me this, how much have you ever invested in a startup? And if the number is 0, I always think to myself, maybe this is not the person who's going to give me the best, most experienced advice. You'll find that's quite common too in areas that everything's new. So always ask yourself, if someone tells you how to do something, have they taken a risk? Have they done their own startup? Have they ever failed? Have they ever put their own money into another business? Have they ever quit their job to do what people are asking you to do? And so keep that in mind. But let me look for some current books. I think it's a good question. And I'll come back on that one.
Thanks. Sir, do you want me to read questions or you can read it by yourself?
I can read it. Let's see.
Okay.
We all saw Mr. Tokaya's meeting Plug and Play in New York City. Do you see Plug and Play as your competitor in the oil and gas markets? Won't harm Kazakh startups closing them doors to prospective clients? Okay, very good question. So I think one thing with Astana Hub is we don't compete with anyone. Our job is just to help create the ecosystem. I'm very happy if there's more accelerators and other organizations in town, and we're happy to work with them. And if they don't want to work with us, that's fine too. We don't compete, which is why we let anyone join Astana Hub as long as they have a Kazakh business. They don't have to be here in Nur Sultan because we don't want to compete with anyone. Now, Plug and Play, we are working with them in several different aspects right now. Plug and Play's business model is now based on corporate innovation. So what they want to do is they want to get corporates to hire them in order to learn how to innovate and have access to startups. And they have a big database of startups. And so they'll go to like the oil companies and they'll say, what's your problem? The oil companies will say, hey, we need this, this, and this. And they'll have this big list of startups and match them. And this is generally how they're making their business now. And so in that way, it doesn't compete at all. So our job will be to get any of our startups into the database as possible so that they can connect them to businesses. And I think we should be having some announcements about Plug and Play this year because we are working very closely with them. Keep in mind too, is even if you have startups coming internationally into Kazakhstan, this is a good thing because it gives an opportunity for people to work with other startups. And I'm more than happy to have a big startup come into Kazakhstan because we'll help them hire people here locally who will get into the startup, who will learn how to run a startup, who will learn how to expand, who will learn how to raise money. And in a few years, they will start their own startup. So this is why we call it an ecosystem, it's a cycle, right? So in that way too, again, I don't see there being any competition because we all win the more innovation we bring into the country. So we'll be announcing Plug and Play. We're looking at bringing in some other companies that we're working with, all at the goal of connecting more startups. Because at the end of the day, you have to have customers, and these companies are really good at connecting startups to customers. So. Okay, I think the next one is, there's some links in there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, next question from Jean Dushaev. How do you think the habits of consumers and the companies will change?
So there's a couple of interesting things that are happening in the world right now. There is the world before the virus and the world after the virus, and they're two different things. And so whatever playbook you probably had before the virus, you're going to have to go back and update because it's going to be a completely different world. So some things to look at is the price of oil is dead, right? This is going to impact a lot of things, especially in Kazakhstan, especially when it comes to the currency. So the world is going to change in the sense that energy, people are coming off the oil-based economies. The other thing is now the vast majority of people actually want to work remotely. So in the United States, over half the people have asked to continue to work remotely. And so now we're going to look at a whole bunch of people who are going to be telecommuting around the world, which is another opportunity to do things. For example, how do you monitor these people? How do you make sure you have remote IT security for these people? How do you train these people? How do you do compliance with these people? How do you sign documents? All of these things will now need to be solved for a larger bunch of people. So there's a big opportunity there in telecommuting. And I think another interesting area is that because of the economy is basically going to stall this year, and it's going to go into probably a pretty decent recession. So cryptocurrency is actually going to be another area I think is going to be in a different world since the virus. And you already see what's Bitcoin at today. God. So Bitcoin is at still over 9,000. So what's happening now in the U.S. is the Treasury is printing USD fast. It's diluting the value of the dollar. And since cryptocurrencies can't be diluted, they're starting to gain into interest and value, and even people are starting to invest in that instead of gold. So I think there's going to be a lot more interest in bringing cryptocurrency solutions to regular people, because I think there's going to be a lot of movement on currencies. I think a lot of currencies are going to go way up, way down very quickly. And so that's going to push more trends into cryptocurrency. And then lastly, I think probably this whole delivery business is quite fascinating. That even in Singapore, we saw this, is that you have restaurants that have it's nothing but delivery. There's no floor. It's just a kitchen. And so a lot of the restaurants around here, I'm in Highville in Astana, they've converted to just using Wolt all the time. They don't even have anything open. But that applies for other business models, doesn't it? There's a lot of businesses that the delivery of the product to the person is, let's say, a commodity, right? It's getting something from point A to B. You just want to do that cheaply, right? And so I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for people to build remote businesses delivering both products and services, and we're having opportunity to do that regardless of where you're at. So I think e-commerce is going to change a lot like that. I think for younger people, shopping is going to change. These are different consumer behaviors are going to change in that way. And they say we're not going to be allowed to be close together probably for years. So interesting is like VR, for example. I can go to a concert in VR on my Oculus, and now that's becoming quite popular. I can watch sports in VR, and so the consumption of media is changing too. It's going to be individualized because it's going to be a very, very long time before we're going to be allowed in large groups. Additionally, a lot of airlines are going to collapse. So it's going to be a very long time before you can jump on a plane and go to a conference. So these are all opportunities that I see. Okay.
We have questions from Vladimir again.
Yes, sir. 11th question from Vladimir. Do you write your thoughts in social networks? What happened with your Instagram? Text and where to read you?
Okay, so I am an extremely private person. and
That's true.
I don't like to have myself on social media, and because I have found that usually it comes back and doesn't do you any good. Go to some country and they want to know what you're doing. So I only use LinkedIn, and I just put my professional stuff there. So I don't have Facebook. I don't like Facebook. I don't like to use any of their products, to be honest, but I have to use the Oculus because they're the ones who make it. And I keep everything on LinkedIn. So I killed text, and that one's gone. Text's gone. But you can always send me a Telegram. Maybe I'll do a Telegram channel. Okay.
Друзья, если есть следующие вопросы, можете писать, или мы можем подключить вам микрофоны. Guys, are there any questions? Okay, we have got one question from Sandu. Do you have plans for other startups?
Yeah, I'll probably go back into startups after Astana Hub at some point. I like doing technology. I like building. So I'm very interested in the crypto space myself because I think cryptocurrency is going to be a lot of the future, and distributed applications are going to be the future. So these are areas that I'm personally interested in, and so I will probably get back then. It's too much fun solving problems and building startups. So, and I will not probably go back to Silicon Valley because I think there's a big world out there, and if you go to Silicon Valley, and I worked in there for my first couple of startups, you only see Silicon Valley. You know, it actually becomes very, what do you say, myopic, is they don't tend to see the world's problems so much. And so I kind of like living in different places to solve other problems. Silicon Valley is hard. It's very competitive. What is the best way to negotiate?
Next question from Jean Dushaev. What is the best way to negotiate with an investor? Is there something you regret with your investors, or do you see a frequent startup mistake?
Okay, so investors. One thing you want to be careful with in Kazakhstan is if you deal with new investors, people who have invested before, because they can be quite needy. An investor who doesn't know very much actually could be a big burden on yourself. And so that's why, you know, one thing we're doing, like with Cause Angels, is we want to make sure that people are qualified, they understand how to invest, because you don't want to take money from someone who doesn't understand your business, because they will put you under a lot of pressure. So I've had mostly good experiences with my investors. It's up to you to pick a good investor. You need to pick somebody. You have to decide what you want. Do you want an active investor who's going to give you advice, who's going to give you a network? Maybe they have investments of businesses that have some synergy with what you're doing. You know, maybe you're doing medical applications and they own a bunch of hospitals. So this is smart money, we say. Or maybe you want an investor who gives you money and leaves you alone. You know, you need to talk to other startups who they've invested in before you accept an investor. There are some bad investors out there. There are what we call predatory investors who put information into your contract specifically to take the company from you. And this happens. And so I recommend to you do a lot of research before you take money, talk to other people who took money from the same group or person, read your terms of your contracts very closely, and make sure that you have the ability to buy out that investor if you need to overrule that investor. And that's going to be all in the documents. You can either use what calls, you know, safe notes from the US, from Founders Institute, or you should really pay for the lawyer to go through your documents to make sure that you have the ability to push back on an investor if they want you to do something. Otherwise, you could lose control of your company. And it's happened to a lot of people. Steve Jobs got fired, you know, from Apple, you know. So that happens a lot. So just make sure you have a good investor, because you're going to be stuck with them for quite a while.
Okay, next question from Sandu. Do you feel as Astana Hub is your legacy? Did this experience give you a personal fulfillment?
This is a deep, deep philosophical question.
Our most active audience.
Sorry to ask too many questions, but
No.
I feel really inspired. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you. I would say it's probably one of the most challenging things I've ever done. And I've worked in lots of different countries and cultures, and I would say working in the Astana Hub is probably one of the most unique places I've ever been in my life. I'm very happy with what we've done so far, but I'm always fighting to do more. So yeah, it's very easy for these types of projects to become something that is a lot of marketing, a lot of visual things, and not a lot of substance. And so we have to keep fighting and making sure that we're serving our customers, and our customers are the citizens of Kazakhstan. and anyone who comes to us for help, because at the end of the day, actually, we're funded in part. We do get some money that eventually has come from tax dollars and public money, and we do report up to a lot of stakeholders in the government, and that means we really report to you guys, and you should be very comfortable to understand that you're our bosses, and that we have to continue to serve the community. And I think we've done a lot, but I think there's a lot more we can keep doing. So, but I'm very proud for what we've done so far.
Thanks. Thank you.
And there's too much hospitality in Kazakhstan because I'm like 15 kilos more than when I landed. And there's this bitch mark and other things have gotten to me. So
It will help you in Silicon Valley too.
Yeah.
Okay, our next question from Averke. What is the difference between startup communities dependent on countries, for example, UK, USA, and Singapore? How the startups should choose the area for scaling?
Okay. So the most important thing, you have to understand the difference between these markets, and you have to understand, at the end of the day, you have to understand where the money sits, right? So you want to service within the countries, if possible, as close to the money source as possible, right? So in Singapore, it's very easy to do a knowledge-based, service-based economy. Everyone knows how to do it. It's got a great reputation for it. It can serve all of Southeast Asia, just a couple 100 million people. In Kazakhstan, that's going to be kind of a different case because this is a developing market. But the areas that are most interesting, I think, are areas that you could take technology and solutions from a more advanced, perhaps, market and apply here and take a good piece of market share here. So if you were to do, let's say, agriculture in the USA, that would be hard, right? Because farms are individually owned and you have to sell the farmers. Or even, let's say you wanted to do education product. If you want to do an education product in Europe, you're going to be talking to a lot of universities. If you want to sell an education product in Singapore or in Kazakhstan, you could potentially just be speaking to the Ministry of Education. And so really want to understand how big your market's going to be and how you can access that market. And it's going to be drastically different for every geographical area in that sense, right?
So first of all, it depends on the market, and first of all, it depends on the area, right?
Correct. And it's stuff like competition. The thing is, Kazakhstan too is there's not a lot of competition when it comes to the B2B market, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
There's a lot that's open. Construction technology, anything in energy, the resource sector. You have a huge advantage. So if I was going to spend 2 or 3 years really working hard at my own business in Kazakhstan, I probably wouldn't spend it selling things to consumers because there's not a lot of consumers. But if I was going to do it in resource sector, there's only 2 really big oil companies to go for. If I can connect it to either one of those, I have a huge customer. I'm done, and so that's why that's important. But in Singapore, it's the same. The consumer market's 5 million people, right? It's not really that interesting. And you can't repeat Singapore. You can't do something in Singapore. You can't even do it across the border because it's completely different infrastructure. But Singapore has all of the international companies' headquarters are there. So that's an very interesting area to look at, is to solve international companies' problems in that case, because they're all there. They're sitting in Singapore. So.
Thank you so much.
Sure, I hope that helps. What do you think about the future prospects for digital market in KZ, about human capital in the sphere? How can we make sure that competent people will stay in KZ and not leave the country to work in the US? Yes, this is a good question. What should be done to keep the bright minds work in KZ and even come back home from abroad? Okay, and okay, the brain drain in Kazakhstan, right? Bolashek and other things. People don't come back. This is actually part of our mission, is actually to create an environment where people with skills have compelling, jobs, and compelling careers and compelling things to do. In Kazakhstan, it's a challenging market because so much of the market is dominated either by government or resource sector, which might not be to everyone the kind of job that they want. And so this is a problem that's recognized all the way up through the government, is that 50% of Kazakhstan is like under 30, which is crazy. This is a crazy number. Okay, the rest of the world's getting old and dying. Kazakhstan's getting younger. But the industries and everything, that all the capital is controlled by people who are over that age and who were born in the Soviet Union and who went to school perhaps in the Soviet Union. And then you have all these people who are under 30 who were born in a completely different country than the people that are older, right? As a young Kazakhstan, independent, more and more open every day. And so there's almost like two different cultures almost. You call this thing like the culture gap, right? Generational gap. And so it's going to be I think it's going to be up to the younger people to create this kind of environment that has these compelling areas. And then what our job at Astana Hub is to be your champion. So one of the things we really fought hard for last year was we had one event that we did last year, the Digital Bridge. And normally I find that a lot of the events that happen in Kazakhstan is, a bunch of, I shouldn't say just Kazakhstan, in a lot of places is a bunch of old people in suits who are having an event for participants, which are also old people in suits. So you have a big event with all these people talking to the same people in the audience who will come on stage and talk also, right? Where are the young people? Where are the people in blue jeans? Where are the people who have ideas, right? So you get so many of these events that are is a lot of policy for policymakers. And so I think I'm very proud of the event we had last year, which we fought very hard to have an event which was aimed towards the young entrepreneurs. And we had the cyber gaming tournament, we had music, we had media, and we had to fight very, very hard to get this event to happen. We bring it up and say, why are you having music at this? Because people like music. And music's just not music. Music's entrepreneurs who are using streaming platforms to make money, This is a world. So what is gaming? Gaming is worth more than Hollywood, right? And a lot of the people didn't know that. A lot of people in leadership didn't know that. And they went to the event last year, and we got great feedback from all of our stakeholders and people who sponsored us. And now a lot of the people understand that, for example, cyber gaming is a huge, it's a huge business, a huge market. They see the value in that. And now we've even attracted some AI gaming companies, big ones, international ones, who have come into Kazakhstan to work with people. So it's our job to help promote that. And I think it's your job to tell us what you want and to help us create an environment where it's compelling to come into work, and you don't have to go look at other markets. So I leave it to you. You tell me what we can do to help. I'm willing to fight for you on that. And I think that's the last question.
Hello, I'm a student of KBTU and I'm doing startup Edufine site that will help applicants find university. And how do you think would the government help in the implementation of such a project? And should I contact them for help?
You weren't that clear. Could you repeat that one more time?
Okay, I'm doing a startup site that will help applicants find the university and such a product. And should I contact them for help?
Maybe you could type it because you just cut out again. Sorry. Can you type it in chat real quick?
We are teammates, I can say.
Okay, you're clear. Okay.
Okay. We are teammates, and our project is U-Defined. U-Defined is like a tool for us, for students, to find new university. We will have like a search, like a Google tool to find a neat university or to find neat specialization.
Okay.
How do you think it will be good if you sell our project to the government?
Okay. All right. So, yeah, I could definitely tell you about that. So really, I think a lot of time here is, and this is all public knowledge. So did you guys know that 75% of all the companies in the country have some kind of government link in Kazakhstan? And 66% of the GDP is also linked directly to the government, which is also quite unique. And so that means if you're doing something like you said, education, I think your ability to succeed within Kazakhstan is going to be heavily influenced with your relationship with whatever government stakeholder is interested or responsible for that area, right? So if you're going to do health, you really should talk to the Ministry of Health. Education, you really should talk to the Ministry of Education. And here's how I would do it. Every ministry has a set of goals. They all have KPIs. Every minister is rated on their achievement within KPIs. And if you ask, you can usually figure out what these particular KPIs are, because not a secret. It could be like, for us in Astana Hub, it's amount of investment we can bring in, it's the number of companies we can create. There's a whole bunch of different things, how many programs we can bring in, these kinds of things. So for you, what I would do, if it's in education, is you want to make sure that here, this is kind of specific here, is you want to find some way that it helps align with the ministers or the whatever the body is that's working in that area with their goals. If the goal is increase in crop production, increase in export of agricultural products, increase in the number of graduates, increase in the number of foreign people come to university, whatever those goals are. Because if you can go in and you can make that connection and say, hey, look, I know how I can help you achieve what you've been told you need to achieve if you work with us, then you have a lot of incentive to get quite a bit of help from the different stakeholders. So what I would do is first figure out who your stakeholder is, kind of figure out what their goals are, and we would be more than happy to work with you to help you do that and help connect you. The only thing that we ask is that anyone we work with, we ask that you sign up to be an Astana Hub member, because that's one of our KPIs and helps us achieve our goals. But you can do that from anywhere in the country. So.
Yeah, help me, Joseph. That we are doing like a virtual business incubators for universities, because our universities are poor and they couldn't afford like a standard business incubation program. And as well, our students are less conscious. So you should incubate them and let them go all the way from idea to the product during the educational discipline. So I pushed this idea to the government several times, but if you are a small person, relatively small person, they do not accept you and they do not pay enough attention,
Yes.
But we think that the best, like a massive generator of startups in Kazakhstan, the massive generation could happen in universities, because youngsters, they are good at creating something definitely new, and they're good for creating products for, as you mentioned, most the huge amount, only young people could create good services for young people. So here comes the question. I will text you again in private message about pushing like idea, but the idea to the government should be pushed from the above, you know. When you push them from the beneath, they always forget about you. But if somebody else push it from the top, then they will pay attention.
I completely agree with you. So, and I think that needs to be part of our job in Astana Hub. Is, you know, let's be fair. Not a lot of people are going to fly to Nursultan to do a startup, right? Mm-hmm. You know, it's not necessarily. You know, you're not sitting there. Oh man, I really wish I could hang out in negative 30-degree weather with 60-degree winds. Oh, I know. Go to Nursultan. But what we do have is the strong connection with leadership. You know, up to Tokayev, to the prime ministers, to the ministries. And so, you know, our job is to be your champion. So if you guys need things, if you have ideas, you know, come to us. We can help you if it's a good idea. If it's a bad idea, I might not. But we should be able to help you to at least get your ideas to the right places. And then, you know, something you should really look at is, you know, anywhere you can influence the success of digital Kazakhstan. Mm-hmm. Somewhere in that process, if you can say, look, if we did this, this will help achieve this. It helps, right? Because that's a big project and everyone knows about it. So we can chat on that. I know you.
Okay, and may I ask the last question about like a road show in abroad countries? So other news about it, because as well, we translated almost the whole virtual business incubator into English and tried to push it to the emerging markets, to developing countries. Because as you said before, 80% of Kazakhstan's economy is governmental. So you couldn't find like B2C. So you should go abroad if you targeted B2C or B2B.
Or Vladimir
plan to do with international roadshow, but almost everything canceled or shifted. And what are the future events?
So, you know, I think realistically there won't be any conferences this year anywhere.
That's pity.
Yeah, and it's not just us. It's, you know, you have to realize, you know, conferences need to make money too. You're not gonna launch a conference if you find out people can't come. So I think there's not going to be much for conferences. I think a lot of them are going to go virtual this year. Mm-hmm. But you know, it's true we need more B2B experience here, and it's always good to talk, to connect with people. But this year it's just going to have to be virtually. There's not a lot. I wouldn't depend on it. I mean, we're still working forward with the roadshow and hoping that events open up. But I suspect that events are not going to open up because we're already almost getting up to halfway through the year. And, you know, it's not just lifting the travel restrictions. It's somebody willing to invest the risk of doing a conference this year. Mm-hmm. But however, the other thing we should do too, which is really one of our big goals, also our KPIs, is to provide both a domestic and international list of mentors. So if you do have, the best thing you could probably do too is if you have a list of people you want to connect with, that's the first thing you should do is find out who you should connect with. You know, don't just kind of blindly go, I need to find some experts in this area, that area. You should find out online. You should see who are the thought leaders in these areas that can help you. You know, and people who are good will tend to write or do something in that area. And, you know, we have a good network too. I'm happy to help connect people if I know somebody. But then we have a wider network of people. So you could start there. You know, find a list of people that you want to try to talk to or you think could mentor you or could invest. And we'd be happy to help try to connect you too. Mm-hmm.
So then it's like logical. You've got a lot of budget. They are left because you couldn't spend them. Probably you could buy a lot of like access to the.
Oh, you're kind of dying too. I think Mati's going offline.
Yeah, many. So, am I back?
Yeah, you kind of drop off and on. What was it? You're saying we have a lot of money, so I stopped listening after that part.
Yeah, money left because our startups, they do not go to the abroad. So you could buy a lot of tickets for for virtual events like EmergeConf. You know, they charge $40 per one ticket. So you could buy a lot of such tickets and distribute it among startup community of Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
And
well, so we're looking at converting like that. We're looking at the virtual conferences to see which ones are good and to see if we can move in that direction. Honestly, in Kazakhstan, we have certain things are very rigid sometimes here. And if money is because of the way things work and it's public money, if the money says we're going to take 10 startups to 10 countries, we can't necessarily immediately reallocate it to something else. However, we're going to try to find the best virtual conferences we can and still live conferences so that we can still have our roadshow. We're working on that. So hopefully, I agree with the solution and I'm trying to make that solution happen. How's that?
Okay, I will text it to you.
Yeah, you can text it to me. How to become a member of Astana Hub? Can foreigners be members? Yes, foreigners can be members. But membership is open if you have a Kazakh-based business, either within Kazakhstan in general or at AFIC. So you need to have a Kazakh company, which we can also help you create because we do have a single window at Astana Hub with a team who's dedicated to help you spin up. And as a foreigner, we can also help you if you want to. If you're not physically here, you are physically here, we can help you land in Kazakhstan. We have our own visa regime. So we can help you hire people from abroad too, and bring in experts who are foreigners. It's actually part of the mission too, is to have international members. So please apply. And I think I have time. I got 2 more left on here. And then I think that's probably all we have time for. Sanya, is that all right?
I think so, sir. If guys, you don't have any questions, if it's last question.
Oh, we have 2 more here. Let's see here.
Okay.
What do you think if the startup would start working on a B2B basis, which is basically, it's B2G in Kazakhstan? Will it limit its potential to scale international markets? For instance, Belarus has poor B2B, B2C market, so the startups directly send their products to international markets. I don't think it'd be a disadvantage to do B2G here. What we need to do is we're working on all the time is we have to create an environment that it's safe for startups to sell to the government. So the thing is, it's very difficult to be able to sell to the government because you have to be in business for so long and you have to meet these really high requirements because, there's anti-corruption laws and there's fairness laws. And so our corporate team, what they're doing right now is they create challenges from government and from enterprises that says, if you solve this problem, for example, we'll give you this amount of money, you'll be this kind of customer. That bypasses a lot of those areas. And that's a place to start. We also have Digital Village with KPMG. If you've got a good B2B solution, regardless of where you sold it, they can help sell your solution to their customer base, and they have hundreds of thousands of customers around the world. That's Digital Village. We have that in the Astana Hub, and I don't see there being any disadvantage for coming from B2G. In fact, if you can sell services to the government here, I think you can be very successful anywhere, to be honest. So, and let's see here. Doesn't look like I have any other questions besides Vladimir, who always kind of asks me for money, but which is a true sign of entrepreneurship when you're always asking for money. Well done, dude. Does anyone else have any other questions before we wrap it up?
Друзья, мы скоро завершаем наш эфир. вы можете задать свои последние вопросы.
Well, I'll let you guys know that we're available too in the hub. If you guys need anything, and we can do more of these types of events, online webinars. Just feel free to suggest topics to us. You can write in on the website. What's the best way, Sania, for people to contact us?
For now, it's 21:30 in chat. Now it was more than 40 before.
Oh, I can barely hear you. Can you say that? What's the best way for people if they want to contact us about this stuff? Where can they write?
Sanya, I couldn't listen to you.
I'm saying,
yeah, guys, please follow up on Instagram, on Facebook, and the other social websites, and be a participant of Astana Hub, and wait for other webinar sessions. Yes, we will do other panel sessions with the best startups. Just follow us on the Instagram. And thanks for all of you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate everyone showing up.
Друзья, всем спасибо большое. Мы завершаем свой эфир.
Меня слышно, да? Арай, ты меня слышишь?
Да, чуть-чуть слышно.
Да, всем большое спасибо. Наши встречи проводятся на постоянной основе с Джозефом. Также мы проводим офлайн такие встречи. Пока будем продолжать онлайн. Давайте до скорой встречи. Всем благодарю за участие, за ваши вопросы. До свидания, Джозеф. Okay. Thank you, Joseph.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for all of us.
Okay. You can turn on the voice and say hello. Say bye.
Всем спасибо, до свидания.
Да, всем спасибо, всем пока. Подписывайтесь на мой канал, да, startupkurs.com. Время для рекламы.
Спасибо, что выделили нам время. Я надеюсь, что понравилось. Немножко, да, со звуком.
Да, в целом нормально. Ребята послушали, так что всем спасибо. Мы пошли. Всем удачи.
Я включаю всем звук. Может, кто-то что-то хочет сказать, попрощаться?